Okay, so Daphne, it's the 3rd of October 2012. It's a great pleasure to be here in Bantry Bay, I think it is, today.
Yes, it is.
To interview at Michael's apartment. Thanks very much for being interviewed. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and about your life, if you could, briefly.
Oh, how far back do you want me to go?
Well, who are your parents, where were you born, and so forth?
Oh goodness, you know how many years that goes back? It goes back 88 years.
Gosh, wow.
I was born in Vilna, which at that time was part of Russia.
Okay.
It then became part of Poland. It then became part of Lithuania, and at the moment it is in fact the capital of Lithuania, and it's now called Vilnius.
Vilnius, okay. I think my daughter was recently there.
It was a very intellectual town, if one can call it that. It was a university town.
And who were your parents?
My parents were... My father's original name was Ilya Neuman. When we came to South Africa, he changed it from Ilya. They gave him the name of Leo, and the surname became Neuman.
Oh, okay.
And my mother was Rochel Rudolph.
Okay.
And her whole family were already in Durban, and she persuaded my father to join the family, which fortunately he did, and he came out ahead of us, and my mother and I followed. And I say fortunately because he was the only one of his family who emigrated from Russia, and his entire family was killed during the Second World War.
During the Holocaust?
Well, not in the Holocaust, because they didn't call it the Holocaust in Russia.
Right.
But during the war, his two sisters were sent to Siberia simply because they were Jewish.
Oh, okay.
And they were a very musical family, my father's family. And the one sister who went to Siberia was a very good violinist. And the authorities of the camps in Siberia used her to show off to important visitors who used to come and see what the Russians were doing to the people in Siberia. And she used to be asked to give a violin recital,
okay,
which she did, and she said that saved her life.
Right.
As a result of which
because she was of
gave
some use.
Extra food, extra blankets to keep warm. Her sister, who was also sent there, died in the camps, as did her brother, who was also a violinist but didn't survive.
And what was your mother's name and where was she from?
My mother was from a place called Saratov in Russia.
Okay.
And my grandfather was a timber merchant in Russia.
Okay.
And as I say, they were all already in South Africa when we came. I came at the age of 5. And because my grandparents never learned to speak English, I had to learn Yiddish to communicate with them.
Oh, do you still speak Yiddish?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
I'm very proud of being able to speak Yiddish.
Oh, wow.
Du redest ein bisschen Yiddish? Of nein?
Nein.
Nein.
Speak a bit of German. So you came to South Africa. What age were you? And what year was
5.
it? Right, and you came to Durban, or? To
Durban, yes. The whole of my mother's family were in Durban. There were 7 children. She was one of 7.
Okay.
There were 4 girls and 3 boys. And initially we all lived in one big house in a road called Clarence Road on the Berea in Durban. And I remember my father's first job when we got to Durban, he was a very fine pianist and a conductor.
Wow.
And the first job he got in Durban was to play, you were all too young, you wouldn't know about this, but the cinema used to be called the Bioscope.
Oh yes, I remember that.
There used to be a tea room bioscope.
Yes.
You used to come in, there were long benches with tables in front where they served you tea and cake or cold drink or whatever, and they showed the film on the screen.
Okay.
And my father's job was to provide the background music. They were silent films, of course, at that time.
Yes.
So his job was to provide the background music for whatever was happening on screen. So he had to know what the film was about, and he had to provide the music to sound like a train if there was a train going on the track, or if there were horses galloping.
Yes,
he had to make music that sounded like horses galloping. And this was his job. And as a result of that, I used to get in for free to the
Wonderful.
Bioscope.
And who were your top friends at school?
Pardon?
Who were your top friends at school?
My top friends were my two cousins who belonged to my mother's older sister. And the one was born in England and the one was born in Johannesburg. And she was married to her first cousin.
Yeah.
And they had these two daughters and we were all of an age. The one daughter was 2 years older than me. The other daughter was 2 years younger than me. So we were all of an age. And we lived round the corner from each other.
Wow. And what was your address?
Pardon?
Do you remember your address?
Yes, I remember my address. It was 143 Clarence Road, Berea, Durban.
Oh, wonderful. And tell us about your late school and then your teenage years and then university and beyond.
Yes, then I went to the Durban High School and I became a pianist as well.
Oh, wonderful.
And, you know, there was never any discussion about it. I was never asked, do you want to play the piano? Do you want to perform? It was just a given that I was going to be a pianist, and I followed in my father's footsteps. And I gave my first concert at the Durban City Hall with the orchestra when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
And I played a Mozart piano concerto.
Oh, wonderful.
And I remember I didn't tell any of my friends. I really didn't have close friends because I used to have to go home from school and start practicing.
Right.
And I remember once one of the little girls in my class said to me, will you come and play, will you come home and play with me? And I looked at her and I said, play what? And she said, just play. I said, I can't come and play, I've got to go and play the piano. And this was my life. I used to rush home from school, practice the piano. There was always something to practice for, either an Stedford or an exam or another concert.
Gosh.
And I never told my teachers or my friends. And when I gave that first performance at the City Hall, my headmistress, of course, discovered that this was me. And she called me up at assembly, and we used to have a big open quad at the school, and assembly took place in the quad, not in a hall.
Right.
And she called me up, and I thought, oh God, what have I done? And she made me stand next to her, and she told the whole school about my having given the concert the night before.
Gosh.